Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another episode of In Case You Missed It. Hope you're all doing well. I've had a good week. Today I want to talk about Chelsea reopening Cobham ahead of this big project restart meeting tomorrow for the Premier League. An article from Nazar Kinsella, so I want to get into some of that. And also the Watford chairman gave a statement yesterday talking about his feelings. And I think it's really important to talk about and address and sort of discuss because at the moment there's a lack of clarity over what's going to happen. So we're going to get into some of that. Firstly, let's talk about the article from Goal, from Nazar Kinsella, because it's a really good article, extensive article, gives a lot of information about the current situation regarding Chelsea. So as you can see, Chelsea reopened training ground ahead of Project Restart meeting as foreign players self-isolate. Basically, the gist of this article is Chelsea have reopened Cobham. They're allowing hourly slots for players to come and train on their own. And the foreign players who've come back to England recently, the likes of Christian Pulisic, Willian, Pedro, Marcos Alonso, Emerson, Kepa and Christensen have to self-isolate for 14 days before they can train. Lampard and the coaching staff aren't actually at the training ground. They're doing it through some video conferencing app that they've been doing recently. I know Arsenal and Tottenham have been doing this recently, and it's really the only way at the moment getting players back to the training ground and keeping to social distancing. It's the only way you can do it. And it's interesting to me because, of course, Everton was the last game we played. I believe that was on like March the 11th, a long time ago. So players have to get back to fitness. And it's not only the players who played in those games that need to get back to fitness, but it's also injured players who were coming back to fitness just before the lockdown. The likes of Christian Pulisic, Loftus-CHEEK, HUDSON-ODOI, Kovacic, I believe, was injured as well. So Lampard is going to have an interesting thing in the sense that for the first time in his tenure, he's going to have a full squad to choose from. But it's also judging the fitness of all those players, because I've seen first 11s for when Chelsea do return and you've got the likes of Pulisic and Loftus-CHEEK in them. I think that's probably a little bit unrealistic unless you can get some warm-up games. But of course, once again, we don't know anything about that. Chelsea are just going by what they know at the moment. And I think it's smart getting these players back to the UK, starting to get some players back into training. But of course, you're still at that distance because there's only apparently one member of medical staff that are there at the moment from a distance judging these players. But still, it's not the same. And how this is all going to work with Lampard tactics and coaches getting their players back in some group and actually getting a proper training session, we're still not at that stage in the UK yet. I know they are in the Bundesliga, but that's a different case. So now we've got this Project Restart meeting tomorrow. It's a big one. And hopefully, finally, we can get some clarity because there's going to be a lot discussed in that meeting, as I'll discuss as well, in terms of a divide between clubs in opinion, because Nazar Kinsella says in his article at the bottom of it, there's a divide between the league's bottom 6 clubs and the rest of the division regarding several issues ahead of this vote tomorrow. This is also about player safety and the use of neutral venues, which has been discussed widely for the remaining games. And a lot of the clubs like Watford and Watford's chairman disagree with this because they think it's unfair. You know, it gives an advantage to maybe higher clubs in the scenario. And it doesn't help clubs fighting relegation like Watford, because Watford's chairman gave an extensive statement yesterday released. And I definitely think if you haven't checked it out, please go and read it in its full extent, because I think it's really honest, it's really open. Any person from any club comes out, especially if you're, say, fighting for the title, fighting for Champions League qualification, or battling against relegation. There's always going to be those motives, selfish motives assigned to what you're saying. I think the Watford chairman comes out and says, yes, of course, I'm going to act in the self-interest of my club. I'm thinking about my staff, my players, the long-term health of my club. And he cites their brilliant win against Liverpool earlier in the season. He does say he's realistic to the fact, of course, we can't have fans back in the stadium, but I think that was an interesting point he made. So I think it was good. And the problem is, without the clarity from the Premier League, from the governing bodies at the moment, of any sort of plan, of any concrete date like the Bundesliga have, yes, Germany and England, very different scenarios in terms of how they've dealt with the pandemic. But until that happens, everyone can say anything. You can say it's going to be null and voided. You should say it can go by points per game. We should restart it tomorrow. You know, whatever you feel at the moment pretty much can be thrown out there because there is no schedule. There is no set date. And until that happens, we have no idea. We're in this limbo state at the moment, which is very frustrating for fans and can throw up a wide variety of scenarios. So hopefully tomorrow, at least whatever it is, I'm sure there's going to be disagreement and debate tomorrow by clubs, which should happen. Everything should be debated and there needs to be serious precautions taken. As Frank Lampard said, pretty much my opinion on Project Restart is what Frank Lampard said last week. You know, I think I echo a lot of what he said, but also juggling that with the business of football, which I think is a key part as well that you can't just dismiss in the current situation. So hopefully by tomorrow, we'll have some clarity. Please let me know your opinions on Project Restart. What do you think will come of this meeting tomorrow? Do you think we'll get any closer to an answer, or do you think we'll be stuck in the same situation we are now? Also, Watford, their chairman chairman sort of the feeling about neutral venues? Do you think neutral venues is the fairest way to do this, or do you think we should just do this if we are to restart the league in sort of the same locations, you know, Vicarage Road, Stamford Bridge, just without fans in the current situation, because that could bring up some problems as well if fans were to congregate outside the stadiums. We know the issues with social distancing as well. And lastly, how do you think Frank Lampard is going to deal with the first 11 when we do restart? Please let me know in the comments below. But that is it for this episode of In Case You Missed It. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.